Hello and welcome to day 23 of my 30 days until 30. Today I am tired and felt like doing just a chill sort of cozy thing. And I started doing it and then realized, this could be the video. I love the smell of rosemary, and as much as I wish that I had some more time on my hands, what I've actually got is this. So I'm just going through a bunch of the bundles that I grabbed out of the dumpster and taking off some parts that are just kind of like loose and putting them in this little bowl that I made once. It's so cute. And then some that are a little bit longer, I, for maybe no reason, have them soaking in a vat of water. I'm not really sure why. It just seemed like the thing to do because they were getting a little bit dry, and I'm not sure how I want to dry them, so I figured that getting them really hydrated first would help. I have that in frame. Yeah, that's chaos. We like chaos here, don't we? I considered looking up ideas on what to do with all of this rosemary, but ain't nobody got time for all that research. Did I make a secondary time joke? Yes. Hi, sir. Hey. You gonna say hi? Nope. He says, I will be right off camera. I should probably do some B-roll of up-close shots, shouldn't I? Hello. I usually would be watching something on YouTube while doing something like this. I think I mentioned in a previous video that I've been watching Jenna Marbles a lot and watching their Jenna Julian podcast, and it's been very nice and healing and cozy. But I also think that forcing myself to do this silently, or not silently, but without anything playing in the background, for the sake of recording this video, has been nice. It's been a nice little change of pace. And it's turned out that this is actually very meditative in a way, which, makes sense. Doing things with your hands is always at least a little bit meditative. It was interesting, some of it has these little flowers. Let me see if I can show you a bunch. I don't know if you can actually see that. I don't know if it'll focus. But apparently rosemary flowers. See the little flowers right there? I think after the year that we've all been in, but especially that us in Los Angeles have been in, with starting off with the fires, and then obviously everything that the rest of the world has been dealing with since mid-January. It's nice seeing that there's still things flowering. I think it feels as though everything is sort of dying or struggling to survive, and so seeing a plant that I didn't really knew flowered at all, having these little flowers is really nice. It's like a little reminder that life finds a way.
life finds a way.
Nothing quite like a Jurassic Park quote in the middle of me trying to be all deep and contemplative. But is there a word for these little things? Like the leafy parts? I guess leaves.
Nice spare!
Got there. This kind of reminds me of Child Life. Not my life when I was a child. Child Life is a program that I think most hospitals that have like a children's department have. That basically, like, the whole job of the department is to try to have some fun, nice little things for kids that are in the hospital. So sometimes that's like having, paints and paper to paint on, or like, a cute little ceramic thing to paint, or crayons, or video games, or sometimes like little, like, if there's a Child Life room, like, oh, the floor's gonna have like a Child Life time. You can go and sit with other kids and be painting or using markers or whatever the activities were. I really like the ones that were painting, which is why those are the ones that are mostly coming to my mind. But it was nice. It was a way to sort of still be a person and be a kid amidst being a patient and having to sort of be, both an adult but also less than a human because you're a patient. And I think something about just focusing on something that your hands are doing, whether it was painting or, Play-Doh or whatever the heck it was really healing. And I don't know, I honestly think that was one of the most like life-saving things of hospitals. Because, when you're stuck in your room and just waiting for the doctors to do rounds that day, or wait for the test, or wait for whatever it is, and that's your entire day, day in and day out for as many days as you're in there, and all you're doing is focusing on your body and somewhat obsessing over it, because that's the whole reason you're there is because there's something wrong, and trying to pay attention to that and just stressing and all of that. That's so hard on your mind, because I don't know, it's like if you ever do a mindfulness exercise where you're paying attention to your breathing in and out, if you're ever having like panic and so you're breathing in and out really fast, and then you're trying to do that mindfulness exercise where you're trying to pay attention to your breathing to calm it down, but then you just become more aware that you're breathing really fast and then that makes it worse. That's kind of what it's like when you're just sitting in a hospital room. There's often not really windows, or if there are, the windows kind of go to a brick wall. I used to do this thing where usually hospital rooms have a lot of different kinds of lights. Like there's a big overhead light, there's usually a couple side lights, there's a more gentle light, there's like a lot of lights. And so I would do this thing where in the morning I would start turning on the lights one at a time over the course of like an hour to sort of simulate the sun rising. And then I would do the same thing at night where I would turn them off one at a time over, an hour or two to simulate the end of the day, so that it felt like, I don't know, you were in the world. But the Child Life stuff was, it was huge. It was the one thing sort of during the day. Again, mind you, you're sitting in that bed all day. Hopefully, maybe you're well enough to be able to get out of bed and like walk around the hall, which if it's a small hospital, by walk around the hall, I mean walk to, 15 feet away and turn back around. Maybe do that a couple times, then return to your room and know that life is going on outside the walls, but you're just stuck there. Knowing that you're stuck there until you're feeling better, so then you're really, 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 really paying attention to your body, because when you're better, then you can leave. And so you're trying to pay attention to like, well, is my pain better? Is my dizziness better? Am I whatever? Yeah. So it's a lot of of navel gazing in a way that I think is good in moderation, but when that's all you're doing and you're there because there's a problem with your navel, gazing at it isn't good. Anyway, so child life was always a nice way to just be a person for a little bit, do something kind of creative. I think most of the good memories from being in the hospital, you know, and there's a lot I don't remember, and there's a lot I remember that I don't want to remember, but a lot of the good memories are, you know, the things sort of around the child life. Like, Chop has a radio room in their hospital that I think it just radios to the hospital. So you can like tune in whenever they're broadcasting, and I think it was kids that were, I don't fully remember. But one time that I was there, we were in the child life room, and, you know, it was me and then a couple other kids that were, you know, also patients in the hospital. And we tuned in, and they were doing some trivia or something. And you could call in with the answer. And I don't remember what the trivia question was, but it was the first time that I was like, I remember this. I know this. I know this answer. And so we called in, you know, said, hi, this is so-and-so from 5 West. Like, this is the answer. And I was right. And it was such a dumb little thing. But the energy in the room after I got some dumb trivia question correct, which, mind you, it's not like then you won money, but we were all just so excited, and we're like, not yelling, but, you know, whooping, and it's a memory that I cherish, because I think it was, at that time especially, one of the few times that I felt like I was kind of good at something when I was hanging out with people, and it truly did feel like I was hanging out with people, which, again, when you're in the hospital every month for at least a week or two, and when you're not in the hospital, you're not doing too good, you're not really hanging out with friends much, if ever. Especially not groups of friends. And so a lot of those, like, I think early-ish, you know, middle school, high school times when you are supposed to be hanging out with kids your own age and whatever. I missed a lot of those because I was in the hospital. So the hanging out with kids my own age wasn't happening. But these times when I was in the child life rooms, it felt like I was just hanging out with kids my own age. And even though I didn't really know their names, I mean, we introduced each other, but, you know, we didn't talk once we left that room. It wasn't like we then became lifelong friends, but it felt like having friends, and like being a normal kid who was hanging out with their friends, painting and laughing and talking about some dumb trivia thing. And it was really cool. I think it was also helpful for me to interact with other kids who are also sick, because you're so rarely interacting with them, because it's not like you're gonna just knock on someone's door and walk on in and say, hi, what's wrong with you? I'm a patient from next door. Let's get to know each other. So, you know, again, for most of your life, you are the sick kid. You know, in your home life, like, you are the one who's in the hospital a lot. At your school, you are the one that's in the hospital a lot. And you don't really have that sense of community with other people who sort of get what you're going through, because no one else is. And hilariously, in my high school, there were actually 2 other people who were in and out of the hospital a lot. One of them actually shared a couple of my conditions. But I think we saw each other a handful of times across the 3 years I was at that school, because our hospital times didn't overlap, or like our non-hospital times. So when I would be in the hospital, maybe one of them would be in school, and then I'd be back in school, and one of them would be in the, you know. So we never really got to know each other, which, I mean, makes sense logistically, but my point still stands that you end up having all of these years where you don't have a sense of like scope or scale when it comes to you being sick. Like, you are sick. You know how it impacts your family and your friends. Period. If you have questions about your health, you're going, I guess, to your doctor, but your doctor's also not there to like hold your hand or to give you like the emotional answer of, you know, how should I feel about this? Or I'm kind of scared about this. Should I be? Or, you know, just the commiseration that comes usually with most hardships in life, where you're able to share them to an extent. But when you're kind of growing up in a hospital, you don't really get that. Because, like I said, you're not going to go knock on someone's door, and hopefully no one else in your life is sick. So when I went out to college, I was young for my year. I was 17 and went 3,000 miles away, which I think made everyone, including myself, very nervous that I was so far away from my family. But we were assured that UCLA had an entire like medical department that was just set up for my exact conditions. Wow. What an opportunity. I get out here, find out that that's not true. It doesn't actually exist. There was a weird website that was up that I think they had planned on having a center for. I don't really know what happened. But it was very much so defunct. And I started college with not knowing if I was going to make it through college. And I mean, make it through in a lot of ways. My health had been so bad for so much of my life up to that point. It had been so bad in really scary ways that, I don't know, no one knew how me being alone and in a different environment and without my usual doctors and without everything, how that was going to go. And that was sort of okay, because it was college time, and I wanted to be able to have a full normal life that included attempting to go to college. Which I don't really regret as much as UCLA. It was a lot of money for an out-of-state tuition that, yeah. But a thing that happens in the fall of my freshman year that I think totally sort of revolutionized my relationship to life and my body was, and this is going to be a little bit of a walk around, so bear with me. So the first week I was out here, I was walking down Bruin Walk, which is like the main walkway on campus where people flyer. I heard someone flyering and like calling out Christian sorority, and me being the type of person that got yelled at by the priest at my Catholic high school for not genuflecting properly because I'm not Catholic, I go up to this person to let them know, I hope politely, that doesn't exist and that it can't exist because sororities are inherently judgmental and superficial and all of these things that I didn't associate with being Christian. And she said, basically, okay, well, we do exist, and if you want to prove me wrong, come to our recruitment events. And so I said, all right, I'll come to your recruitment events and prove you wrong. By the end of that week, I was just flabbergasted because I met all of these women that seemed genuine and diverse and really, really supportive, to the extent that by the end of the week, I sat down with the new member educator, which at the time was called Pledge Mom, and the president who had flyered to me, and tears in my eyes, so dramatic, said, I really want to join, but I don't know if I'm going to make it to the end of the quarter, and I don't want to have to quit midway because I'm, having to drop out of college or dead. Which was probably the most dramatic, angsty thing that I probably could have said, but at the time, I that was exactly how I was thinking. Not, I should probably focus on academics and my health to see if I can get through, but I don't want to disappoint everyone by trying to join and then having to leave because I'm dead. Priorities. But I, that week, had been given a tour of the house that some of the girls lived in. It was a boarding house. And on the tour, I asked the housing representative, basically I said, hey, this place looks real swell. If I don't join, can I still live here? She said, yeah. Amazing. Second question. I'm real sick, and I have a J tube, and so I have a pump that goes on at night, and it's not exactly quiet. And my life experience up until this point has been, you need to hide everything medical as much as possible because you'll be rejected, or you'll scare people off or whatever. And I was like, hey, so I've got this stuff and I can't really hide it if I'm living here. And she said, that's fine. We've actually got 2 members who have cystic fibrosis, and they've got this medical equipment in their room, and it's never been a problem. And when I say, and I do realize in telling this story that it's so small, but when I say that, like, the future lit up, the future lit up in my mind, because she's telling me that there's 2 people in the sorority who are very, very, very sick that have chronic illnesses, and they're part of the sorority, and they've lived in the house, and they've lived with all of these women. And the way she was saying it wasn't a problem. They weren't like subpar members. It was just like saying, yeah, we've got, some girls that speak French that live here. It fully sort of changed how I thought I could talk about my health and myself in all of those ways, because here's a place and people that's chill. Like, I can be sick and honest about that and have medical equipment and have medical problems active happen, and they're not gonna reject me or run away or whatever. So even then, at the end of the week, when I said tearfully that I couldn't join that quarter, they made it really clear that I could still be friends and come hang out and, all of those cool things, which was, again, revolutionary. Like, they didn't expect anything from me. They just wanted me to have a home there, and, again, huge. And so that year actually was the first year that I had to change out my J-tube myself, because, again, my surgeon was at CHOP, 3,000 miles away. So I obviously had seen him change them out because it's attached to my body, but I'd never done it before. And one of the actives was like pre-med and, very sciencey. And I was like, oh, hey, I have to change out my J-tube. Is it cool if, could you be with me when that happened? I don't remember exactly how I posed it, but she said, yeah. And so I went to the house and laid on the bed of who later ended up being my big sister in the sorority, and changed it out myself. Now, I didn't tell her before I started that I hadn't ever done it before. So by the end, when I was like, oh my gosh, I did it, and she was like, what do you mean you did it? Like, haven't you done this before? I'm like, no. It would have probably been smart for me to tell her so that if something went wrong, I could have told her, hey, we need help. But again, like, this was just the first times that I could be doing health-related things that normally I would have done behind closed doors, hidden, secret, not told anybody. But I was able to do that with somebody. And that just is... I again know how simple that sounds, but I didn't really have people visiting me in the hospitals growing up, other than, my immediate family. It was isolating. And so I was able to do this thing that I was pretty scared about, that I knew if something went wrong, while it was a really simple procedure, it's not like I had anywhere to go to get help for it. Because again, doctor was 3,000 miles away. But getting to do that with somebody there who was there to support me, but also was like, this is cool. And having someone who's like, this is cool also is such a change, because normally, if I showed people my J-tube, it was, that's gross, or, people get kind of icked out by it. And so having someone there who was there to support me, but also was there because like that, it was interesting and she wanted to be there to see that, was huge. Then when it came around to me actually joining and being more active in the org, I actually got to know one of the two people who had cystic fibrosis, and and it was the first time in my entire life that I had someone that I could look up to, that I could go to with questions and fears, or looking for advice, that understood what I was asking, and had been there. Obviously, I don't have cystic fibrosis, but having someone who was also in and out of the hospital, and despite that, was dancing and was in the executive board of the sorority and doing all this stuff, it was like I now have a model of what life could be. And there were just like a couple times that were such small little things, but meant a lot. Like one day I was coming home from class and had been having conversations with my doctor about doing a PICC line, which is like a permanent IV. And they were really suggesting it. I was worried, both from like it hurting, and I don't really run fevers, so if I got infection from it, we wouldn't really know. And it dawned on me that for the first time in my whole life, I could text someone who had had one and had made that choice. And so I texted her, and like she very like honestly sort of straightforward was like, yeah, like this is how it feels, like this is what I have to do to sort of take care of it, just walked me through it and heard my fears and was able to like counsel me on it, which again, it was the first time that it wasn't just trying to make my best educated guess at what the best choice was. I don't know, I think everyone needs someone in life that they can sort of look to or go to, or even if they don't reach out to them often, that they know they can reach out to, and like they'll understand what's going on, or have been there before or whatever. And she was that for me, and she was the first person. and really the only person that I've ever known that I could do that for. And I mean, luckily because of her, I was able to do that for other people who, you know, were chronically ill and needed someone to talk to about that. And I always have loved being able to do that for people because I know how important that is. I think that when you're able to talk about something that is such a huge part of your life, like, you know, your health, it's simultaneously like a level of trust, because health is not a thing we talk about a lot in America in that way, but also it's really normalizing. And so I'm never a person that's going to necessarily call out and ask somebody, hey, how's your health? Like, how's your heart doing? Because it's such a personal thing that, and I know it can be really, really triggering for a lot of people, myself included. And so, you know, out of the blue being like, hey, you might have been having a great day. Tell me about something that might make you cry. But it's still a thing that whenever I get the opportunity to talk to someone about their health or my health or whatever, it's so treasured and valued. Yeah, and getting to counsel people or advise people or just be there with people in these times with them experiencing things, whether or not I've experienced them, it's very healing. It's a really great way for me to start healing some of that trauma of medical experience. But I need to check my computer because it's saying it's almost dead. I don't want to admit how many hours it's been. Look at this. I've got some here that are gonna soak for a little bit. In case you were like, why aren't you gonna use it for food? The mixture of smog and sap has done wonders for my skin. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with this. If you have any ideas, let me know, because I don't know, I love the smell. But this video ended up being a lot more contemplative than cozy, which I'd intended it to be cozy, but that's not where I went with it. I think I am sort of gonna say that the point of this video is life lesson number 3, which is community. That it's important to find the people and places where you can be you and you can be safe. And I think the life lesson in that, because that's a general thing, but the life lesson that I learned through my 20s about that is that it's also okay for that to change. I think that for a long time I have really looked at the communities that I've been in as my community, period. And then when that community changes, or I am no longer there anymore, or something happens, it can be really, really hard, because part of your identity is based on your community. And when you don't have that anymore, you get a little lost. And I think me talking about growing up in and out of the hospitals and then finally finding a place here where I could be the chronically ill me that I felt as though I couldn't fully be outside the hospital. And part of that time in my life was transitioning to not having it be there's my sick life and my healthy life, and having those be two distinct things, which were always a little bit of a lie, because even when I am at my 100% peak, most healthy, I'm still not. Like my genetics are still flawed, and my heart is still not good at its job, and my nervous, even when I'm completely healthy, I'm not 100% healthy. And so I think that living so much of my younger life where there was me being sick and being very, very sick, and then me pretending that I'm healthy and trying to be normal. And when I went to college and finally met people who were living life fully and were sick, it made me realize that part of community, hopefully, is finding a place where you're able to be yourself fully. And obviously there's areas where different parts of your personality come out, or you have different roles in different places, and so that happens. And that's, I think, very good and healthy. I think it's good to have spaces where you can be in a different role than other spaces, because you don't want to always be the mature, in charge, put together person. Or, you don't always want to be the wild, dancing on the tables person. But finding places where you have a community that is able to sort of embrace you as you change and embrace those changes and allow you to experiment with those different parts of who you are, I think is really important. And I think the life lesson that I've also learned in terms of community is that oftentimes I could have trusted my community more than I did, where I thought I had to hide some parts of me still. And in talking just about health, there were lots of times with this sorority, the sisterhood, where I would very distinctly try to hide when I was sick. To the extent that once I was passing out and was knowing I had only a couple steps before I passed out, made it to the bathroom, closed the door, head hit the ground, thinking that I had hidden myself away well enough. However, my hair was sticking out underneath the door because I had very long hair at the time, and so people found me and wanted to help and take care of me. But then in other ways that I wasn't as open about who I was, especially with being queer and non-binary, that I thought that some members of my community wouldn't be okay with that. And the thing that I've learned is that some are. In fact, a surprising number are. And if I had just let myself be myself a little bit more, then there could have been a lot more years where I was able to grow and adapt in a loving community versus trying to sort of hide parts of myself even for myself, or trying to shun those parts of myself so that I could retain that community that I thought wouldn't accept me if I was open. So life lesson, community is important, which Liam is sniffing the camera. Community is important, but also don't be afraid that the community is going to go away because you're yourself, because the right community isn't going to go away because you're yourself. And it can be really, really, really scary to fully be yourself in front of people who you're afraid are going to leave. But I know at least my life is so much more freeing when I'm able to figure my own self out, but have a community that I know is still going to be there as I'm figuring myself out. And I think that started with this house, which as much as I get frustrated by my job, like, this house is still where I associate a home that I could, for the first time in my life, fully have peers that were like me in some ways, like peers that were my age, that we were able to hang out, and I could figure out the parts of me that I had fully tried to divide up. Because when you're living with a bunch of people, you can't really hide that you're sick, versus when you're living alone with your family, your friends aren't going to see you when you're sick because they don't live with you. And so this was the place where I fully had to embrace that part of me that I had tried to hide and, learn independence, but also like learn what my role could be. And that role, I think, has changed over the years, hopefully. I went from definitely being the more annoying person, which my friends were kind enough to tell me that I was annoying, the more exuberant, annoying person, to, being an advisor and being more in a mentorship role. And that's largely to do with that sisterhood and with this house where I was able to learn and develop that. And then over the decade, had to figure out how I would be able to figure out other parts of me while being so afraid of losing that community that I had been able to find those other parts of me in the first place. And so I think not just community, but learning that it's okay for you to leave the community for a while. It's also okay for you to try to trust the community more than you think you can. And it's also hopefully okay to return to community after you've put them at arm's distance. Because sometimes the parts of yourself that you are scared to look into because you're worried that you'll lose people that matter a lot, I think once you figure out what those parts are, you want those parts of that community back. Yeah, I don't know. I'm rambling a lot, but second life lesson: find community where you can be yourself. You can be yourself at your best, you can be yourself at your worst. You can figure out how to integrate all these aspects of your life that you've kept isolated. And finding those spaces where you're able to stretch and grow in these areas that would not necessarily have been accessible to you if you hadn't reached out to those areas. Like again, if I hadn't tried to connect more with the queer community and with that aspect of my life that I'd for so long repressed, then I wouldn't have figured out that I wanted to go into disability advocacy. I would not have gone back to school, and I would not now be applying to master's programs. I don't know. In some, find community, understand that sometimes community is going to go away, and that's also okay, as much as that is heartbreaking and really, really, really hard, and I think a thing that is normal to try to prevent it going away. It's also okay for it to go away, and for the time that it was there in your life, it did what it needed to do. And whether it challenged you and pushed back against you, or it supported you and encouraged you, it did what it did. And moving away from that, you can decide what aspects of it you want to keep in who you are. And then, finding a way to experiment with who you are and integrate the parts of you that you want to integrate. And I'm repeating a lot of the same stuff I've already said. But yeah, I have always been me, but I didn't know myself, especially even at the beginning of this decade. I really didn't know myself. I didn't know how I could live as someone with chronic illnesses, but also be in the world and have that be intertwined and not trying to hide myself stumbling or needing help. I didn't know who I could love, and I tried a lot to love in the way that I thought I had to. And I really tried to be that good Christian girl who was going to get married to a nice Christian boy, and I really tried to live that. And while my initial community with the sorority allowed me to explore and accept the parts of me that were sick, it was then moving on from that community and then now being able to return to an extent, but moving on to an extent from that community that allowed me to learn these other parts of myself. So, life lesson, find community, but don't ever stop finding community. Just because you found your people doesn't mean that you found all of your people. Might be someone new who will be a new best friend that you just have to say hello to, and maybe they'll allow you to explore parts of yourself that you're not currently aware of. This is going to be hell to edit. Anyway, thank you for being on this journey with me on day 23 of my 30 days until 30. I hope that you have a good rest of your day, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye!
Turning 30.
I'm so glad I cleaned my table before doing this. It's an absolute wreck.